Planning Commission to order, please. If you stand with me, please, I'll lead the prayer and invite you to lead the pledge. Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day and the blessings and opportunities you continue to give us, Heavenly Father. You keep blessing us, and we thank you for that. And we thank you for this holiday season, and we pray, Heavenly Father, that the mindset that we all have, we'll be more friendly, and we'll help more people, and we'll search out avenues that we can help. And we thank you for those opportunities. Pray that you'll just be with us tonight in this meeting. In Christ's name, amen. Face the flag, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Be seated. Call roll, please, ma'am.
Rhonda Allen. Here. Richie Bowen. Here. Veronica Buchanan. Will Jordan. Here. Mike Cush. Here. Jeff Phillips. Right. Pettis Reed. Here. Steve Sandlin. Here. Mike Vaught. Here. Vincent Windrow. Here. Craig Lynch.
Present.
We have a quorum.
Okay, I'd like to entertain a motion on the approval of our November minutes.
Mr. Chairman, I received copies of the November 22nd and December 8th meetings in the mail. I've reviewed them, found them in order, and moved that they be approved.
Thank you. Second. All in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. Motion carries. Doug, you want to tell about something not withdrawn or deferred, but postponed?
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Tonight's meeting, originally we were going to have a public hearing on the proposed comprehensive plan for the unincorporated county area. A lot of work has gone into the plan. Unfortunately, with the weather event that we had here and also up in Kentucky where our project manager is located, he wasn't going to be able to make it safely, he didn't think, here tonight. So after discussing it with the rest of the consultant team, as well as Mayor Burgess and Chairman Lynch, we decided it would be best to go ahead and postpone the public hearing until probably next month sometime. We have to advertise 30 days ahead of time before having a public hearing before this body. I think prior to us adjourning under other business, we can talk about another day. We've got some ideas for that. But in light of the time that we have tonight, with the other people here on the agenda, I think we should just hold that to the end. So I know that I've talked to a number of people in the audience who are here for that tonight, and I apologize for having to bring them out on a cold night like this. But unfortunately, this just came to light today, and we did our best to get the word out to as many people as we could. But I figured there'd probably be some that we wouldn't be able to reach. But so with that, we are wanting to postpone this public hearing tonight until our full consultant team can be here. And again, that'll probably be sometime next month, and we'll discuss a date a little later on, and then do the notification based on that new date. So I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, anybody have any questions? All right, site plan review, Harvest View Church.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you. The Harvest View Church, this is a site plan actually that was approved, I believe, back in 2005, if I remember correctly. However, no construction was ever done with the church. They've significantly changed the building and the layout that they have here. So even if it had been approved and been extended, they still would have had to have come through this process because of the changes they have made. You have the site plan before you. The first page is the actual site plan and shows the topography, the layout of the buildings, parking areas, and whatnot. The second page is the landscape plan. We did send a number of comments to the design engineer, and pretty much all of the comments have been addressed. Just a couple of minor things that we noticed on the plan. On the back of the property, you'll notice that there's some floodplain back there. It is Zone AE, which is within the 100-year floodplain, and there are elevations established. I just don't see anywhere on here where they actually listed the elevation. And the only other comment I had was on the landscape plan on the second page, that there is a section there that outlines how much green space is required in the parking area. They do have that, but I don't see anywhere where we've asked them to identify the actual amount that was provided, not just what is required. Other than that, those are the only two comments that I can see. All the other comments were addressed. I don't know if Mr. Corbett has any comments about the drainage. I believe he was satisfied with that as well, but we'll be happy to answer any questions.
Dale.
Just briefly, the drainage, the drainage briefly is the same as previously planned. We had put in some green swells and stuff to meet the new stormwater requirements. That meets our requirements, Mr. Chair.
Okay, questions? Have a motion?
Just to show the elevation on the plan. Yeah, I just don't, if it's on here, I'm just not seeing it, but it's, I don't think I'm seeing, I'm not seeing it, so I don't think it's on here.
No more motion approved.
Okay. Got a motion second.
Subject to the staff comments.
Got a motion second. All in favor of the motion say aye. All opposed, no. Motion carried. Okay. Lee Barrett, conditional use permit.
Thank you, Chairman Lynch. Our first application this evening is for 8578 Lebanon Pike. The property is approximately 2 acres in size. It is currently zoned R15 and has an existing conditional use permit for a variety store and for the storage of a fencing contractor. And the request this evening is to add an additional use of the sale of used vehicles to the site. Now, the variety store was actually a grandfathered use. It was legally existing before our zoning resolution was adopted, so it would be a legal non-conforming use. However, in 2004, a Type 3 conditional use permit was granted by this board to allow the fencing contractor to store fencing material on the site. Now, that contractor no longer works there, so that use is no longer being used. Now, in addition to the variety store that's still in existence, he wants to start selling used vehicles. The used vehicles actually vary greatly, everything from motorcycles to RVs and everything in between. So it just depends on the month and what they have at that time. Historically, the organization of this property has been a problem, the kind of stuff being everywhere. So we have recommended that an area be designated for the storage or display of used vehicles. And you would find a map within your materials, within your agenda packet, that showed kind of the area we were recommending to minimize the distraction to motorists as they travel on this roadway. Now, this is part of the North Area Land Use Study, and it was recommended for low-density residential. The surrounding area and the property itself is all zoned R15. There are a few home-based businesses along Lebanon Pike, but no other commercial zoning for about three-quarters of a mile. We did receive one phone call in opposition to this application. They had some very serious concerns about the traffic in the area and the safety of the cutoff road intersection right there in front of the property. But otherwise, I'll show you the pictures of the area. So this is the existing site. And this is where the fencing contractor used to be, but it's vacant now. So we can see the intersection of Cutoff Road. And I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Questions? Well,
I received a call also worried about parking and people backing out on the road. I noticed when you went through your slides there, it showed parking in the rear and there was a gate shut. And this person told me that's exactly what there's a sign that says parking, but there's a gate that's always closed. I mean, can we make any more stringent requirements as far as designated parking off the road and the gates to remain open or something like that during business hours? Because this person said people are parking on the street and backing out in the street to get out of there, and the parking doesn't do any good if there's a gate that's closed to the parking area. I mean, are there any thoughts on what we could do to improve the parking situation? That road just getting busier all the time right there.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it'd be inappropriate at all to put something in there that, it's something that the owner will have to, or not, the person who leases the space more likely will have to be the one policing it for the most part, unless we are aware that there's a problem. But I don't think it'd be inappropriate to put some kind of a condition on there that basically says, the gate for the parking area needs to be open during business hours and no one is to be backing out onto Lebanon Road. I mean, I agree. That's a high-speed area right through there, and people need to be going out front first, so. Yeah.
What about the part designated for a fencing contractor? That is not being used for that at this point in time. Does that right just carry on in case they find another fencing contractor? Does that go away without being used for that purpose for a length of time?
I don't believe the conditional use permit had an expiration for that. So basically, yeah, if somebody were to come in, another fence contractor operating under the same parameters that the original one was approved for, they could do that today. But it's been, my understanding is that's been unoccupied, that portion of it's been unoccupied for quite a while. So.
I also had this, probably the same call that the neighbor, or I don't know if it's neighbor or not, but was interested about the safety right there. And it was also something about the hours of operation. Liz, what did you say, hours of operation?
The hours of operation actually weren't included in the application, but the sign on the property says that they are Tuesday through Sunday, 9 to 5:30.
Well, this person, when it was originally, she thought it was only Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Do you remember, does anybody?
That was not a condition in the
It was not a condition?
report, in the conditional use permit approved in 2004.
This says, the sign here says what, Tuesday through Sunday?
Mm-hmm. No, there's no restrictions on the time that the store could be open. But once again, we do have to consider that the variety store itself was a grandfathered legal nonconforming use. So they were a little bit limited when they reviewed it the first time as well.
Okay. Any other questions?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, if I could, maybe you said, Miss Elizabeth, and I didn't understand it. This property is currently R15, right?
That's correct.
Can you run me through the history of it again and how we got to where we are right now with that flea market?
The variety store flea market has been there since before we adopted our zoning regulations, which means as long as it continues to operate as such, it can continue into perpetuity. That's based on state law and our zoning regulations. So in 2004, they came in to add an additional use of a fencing contractor storing fencing material on the site. And that's what they also included a variety store in that conditional use permit in 2004, but as I said, it's already existing legal nonconforming use. So the fencing contractor is no longer there. They've had a lot of used vehicles being sold from the site, and that's what brought them in before us today.
All of the storage that's outside, is all of that conforming?
I think what prompted the codes department to really start looking into this was the fact of the vehicles being stored there. That part of the application really falls out, in my opinion, falls outside of what we'd consider a variety store. It starts getting into vehicle sales and those kind of things. So I believe that they did have, the codes department is working with them on some of the storage issues. But the big reason they came before us was because of the vehicles.
So basically, the sale of used vehicles, that's why they're here.
Right.
Correct.
Yeah, if there's issues with the rest of the outside storage, that's something codes will work with them on and to remedy. We actually met with the owner of the property and also the person who's leasing the property, myself and Ms. Joanne Criswell, and the owner and the tenant. We're all there, and we kind of explained to them where we were coming from, what the issues were, and that's why this application is following.
So everything that's stored out there, all of the stuff is conforming?
Well, that's what I'm saying. I think the codes is working with them on some of those issues with the outside storage. The big thing we're looking at, though, is not so much the outside storage, it's the sale of the vehicles. That's really what we're looking at here tonight. So I guess to answer your question, I think codes is working with them on some of the outside storage issues, because I don't think it's all conforming, all the outside storage issues.
Thank you.
Okay, anyone else? Questions?
No, they're not really doing anything different, really.
Could the ingress
No.
egress be improved? Maybe move the opposite cutoff? Would that make it worse, or?
I mean, if they would like to, I mean, we would help them look into that if that's something that they would.
Well, that seems to be a concern, you know, so.
Well, if the concern is just that they're backing out onto the road, I mean, I don't necessarily know if the access has to change any for that, but.
You saying total parking in the rear? all of it, make everybody park in the rear?
Yeah, you could have an in and an out. I don't know. I'm looking, that's what I'm looking, you know, it appears to me that the where you go in is down on the narrower end of it. So if maybe it was on the wider end of it, you might have a little easier to turn around when you got in there. I don't know. That might stop some of the backing in and out. I don't know.
Okay. Any other questions? We'll open it up to a public hearing. Ron, do you have a question?
Doug, you said on the fencing that it's not been used for the fencing contractor for some time, but yet the last conditional use permit we had was for that purpose, right?
I believe that's correct, yes.
Okay. So, and we say we'll review the conditional use permits twice, you know, every 2 years, or if we receive a complaint. Would it be appropriate, since it hasn't been used for that purpose and we have received a complaint, would it be appropriate to take that off of there as a use currently? Because, I mean, I understand the part that's grandfathered in, but I hate to leave things permissible on there that it's not being used for either.
Well, at this point, it's not in violation of anything, and really the way to remove that would be through another hearing like this. Of course, we didn't, that wasn't part of the original application. I don't think the Planning Commission can really just say, well, we're going to void that particular permit at this point. So I guess to answer your question, I mean, I don't think it's a bad idea necessarily, but if it was in use and then just is not, it's not really in violation. And if the applicant or the owner wanted to do that, we just go back through this process because there was no expiration on it.
Yeah, because I guess it just feels like to me the property just continues to evolve and doesn't have a clear use, doesn't have a clear purpose. Mm-hmm. And so that was my reason for saying, does it need to be tidied up? Mm-hmm. And I think that would probably help address, you know, the concerns we have too about the parking, and it just doesn't feel like it has a plan. It feels like it's just kind of loosey-goosey, and whatever we're going to do in any given day is, you know, how it needs to be, how they're wanting to use it. And so if there's some way for us to make it be, you know, more of a recognizable use, more of a recognizable plan, and because of its odd shape and the parking and the, you know, backing out into the street, that's what I'm looking for is how do we clean it up for them, how do we clean it up for the neighbors, and let it be something that, you know, complements that area. I'm not sure I'm feeling that yet.
Okay. Open it up to a public hearing. Was anyone here wish to speak for this? Anyone here wish to speak against this? We'll close the public hearing. Nobody here for or against. This applicant's not here, right? Is the applicant not?
I don't see him.
The applicant is not here. That's a question. No.
Do we not still adhere to the rules? If the applicant's not here, we do not look at it. I know this isn't a rezoning, but this is, I don't know.
That's been the policy. It's not, I'll just say it's not a requirement that you do that. Now, considering Ms. Allen's comments, you know, maybe if the applicant's not here and there's questions about the, you know, the overall use of this property, perhaps that's something, if you wished to defer, that we could kind of sit down with them and talk to them a little bit more about, and then come back next month with a little more concrete idea, you know, maybe some things to address some of your concerns. That's really, it's up to you at this point. So.
I think that'd be a good idea.
I'll make a motion we defer to give staff opportunity to confer with the applicant and try and have the applicant here next meeting or whichever meeting is comes back up to answer questions.
Okay.
Second. Jeff.
Just another quick question, Doug or Elizabeth, if I could. The property's still R15 and the owner's not asking it be rezoned.
That's
correct?
That's
correct.
Why? Why shouldn't he ask for that property to be rezoned?
In 2004, when they came through for that conditional use permit, there actually was a rezoning request on it as well, and the Planning Commission at that time determined to just leave it as a conditional use permit as opposed to rezoning it. But that is something we could reconsider at this date.
I mean, quite frankly, just looking at the use of the property, I mean, there's nothing residential about this. For all intents and purposes, it is commercially zoned, even though it's got the conditional use permit for it, but doesn't have the zoning underlying it. I mean, we wouldn't have any problem making that part of this. You know, like I said, the property is what it is. It's been like that for a number of years. You know, we might as well put that in there and make it appropriately zoned for what it's being used for.
I would just think that it appears that they made a couple of changes after the grandfathering actually went into place, and it's not an R15. I'm thinking we're continuing to approve that old grandfathering thing when really he should be looking at rezoning that property if he's going to continue that business out there. It's just my opinion. I don't know that that's the correct one or not, but it's just my opinion that I don't think we ought to be looking at conditional uses. I think we ought to be looking at rezoning, whether it's yes or no. I think that's what we ought to be looking at.
Okay, had a motion to defer. Do you have a second? Do you have a question, Mike?
I'd feel more comfortable with this if you talked to the owner, if they would pull the previous conditional use and get a more specific plan as to parking, where the vehicles will be, and let's get that on paper, where possibly it's enforceable. And we don't have these drifting off issues where it's drifting into another use, you know.
Yeah, and we'll, when we contact the applicant about this, we'll relay those concerns. And really, this wouldn't be without precedent. You'll recall property on Shelbyville Highway. There was a motorcycle shop out that way, Mr. Sanford's property, that there were a number of type 1 and conditional use permits and everything kind of hanging out there. We kind of consolidated everything into one permit so that there would be no questions, and this sounds like a similar type situation.
Yeah, a little bit of a site plan and a little more specific, and with that, I'll second the motion, Chris.
Okay, have a motion and a second to defer. All in favor of the motion say aye. All opposed, no. Motion carries. Okay, Monty Turner, rezoning and conditional use permit, location Epps Mill.
Thank you. Our next application is on Epps Mill Road. The property is currently R15. The proposed rezoning is to services for the purposes of a general store. The applicant is proposing to subdivide a 1.38 acre tract from a much larger 89 acre tract. You should find the concept plan in front of you, a much larger edition than what's going to be on the screen. Should be easier to read. The concept plan shows a 9,360 square foot Dollar General store with 32 parking spaces. They are proposing to attach to the Murfreesboro City sewer system, which would mean they'd have to meet the Murfreesboro standards as well as any county standards. This area was about 170 acres around the Buchanan exit. It was rezoned to commercial in 1971, and then in 1985, 47 acres across the street from this property was rezoned to industrial. So the property is surrounded by industrial, commercial, retail, wholesale trade, transportation, and of course R15. This is adjacent to R15. You most recently remember the travel plaza that was considered on the corner of Capitol Way and Epps Mill Road just this past summer. So the area is classified as an interstate mixed-use node in the Christiana Buchanan land use study, and the intent of this node is to allow uses that would support interstate and commuter types customers, such as retail stores. So this would fit into that use. So once again, the concept plan, and you do have one in front of you as well. So this is just a quick look at the area. And the applicant is present, and I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, questions?
What is the difference between services and commercial and the rezoning?
They're essentially the same thing. The services is just one of our commercial zones.
Yeah, the C2 commercial zone is what everything, basically when they redid the zoning back in 1984, anything that was zoned commercial came in with what was called a C2 commercial designation, which basically meant it was zoned commercial prior to 1984. So for all intents and purposes, for our purposes, we're looking at it tonight, they're identical, really. So.
Okay, other questions? Anybody have a question before I open it up to public hearing? We'll open up the public hearing. Did anyone wish to speak for this? Anyone wish to speak for this? Is the applicant here? Come forward, we probably have some questions.
Good evening, Chairman, Planning Commission members. I'm Monty Turner with Turner & Associates Realty out of Nashville, Tennessee. Be happy to answer any questions you might have. It's a 9,000 square foot Dollar General store that we're proposing out here on Epps Mill Road. And we've done similar projects up in Walter Hill, Lascassas Pike, Rockvale, to give you some other examples of recent Rutherford County projects.
Well, this one just no food. I mean, other than the canned goods and all that, you're not going to have.
It'll be similar to the other stores, and they've really expanded the grocery section to include. You know, they've always had milk and eggs, but quite a bit of additional grocery items in their merchandising now. You can go in there and get ground beef and sausage and bread. I mean, it's.
I believe Ms. Emsley said you would be hooking up to city sewer, so you'll have to meet the city's requirements above and beyond our requirements. So that is another safety net for us. It's the county. That is correct. Right?
Yes, sir.
I know some of your buildings have rental units in the side. Is this a standalone building, or does
Freestanding,
this one have a
standalone?
That's what I thought. By the
I have a question, not necessarily for the applicant, more of a staff question, really just because I need an answer to this question. On our notes from the agenda, from the memo, it says the long-range transportation plan, that this is going to require a 60-foot right-of-way, and it makes a statement that the right-of-way right now is currently cattywampus. That's a technical term, by the way. But it says that the applicant is proposing to dedicate 40 feet of right-of-way. Okay, tell me, let's do simple math. In 10 years, what happens when we need another 20 feet?
The 40 feet is actually from the center line, so it'd be more than their portion of the 60 feet. 60 feet would be the total right-of-way width.
Oh, the 60 is a total?
Yeah.
Okay.
So
and
they're
doing 40
feet
on either side of the center line? Mm-hmm.
Right.
Okay.
This would give us, based on our plan right now, our long-range plan, this would give us enough right-of-way for what we need.
It'd be more than enough?
It'd be more than enough. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Another question, Mike?
This building will look similar to lighting and like you've used in other buildings, landscape similarly, and the impervious parking maybe and that kind of stuff.
I haven't contemplated the pervious concrete at this point, but the landscaping will look similar to the other projects.
Okay. Other questions? Did Commissioner Jernigan have a comment?
Mr. Jernigan, yeah, Joe Frank Jernigan, the commissioner in this district, had a couple of comments that he relayed to me, and I told him that I would bring those up at the meeting tonight. The first had to do with the right-of-way, which I think we've covered. The other had to do with looking into the possibility of having some kind of a left-hand turn lane going into the property. I told him I'd bring that up for discussion. So.
What?
Doug, for the benefit of the public, can you discuss a little bit about when a turn lane is determined? Because just as I'm looking at it, that's the same thought I'm having, is it seems like we can never have a discussion about Epps Mill Road without a discussion of a turn lane, just because of the traffic and how narrow it is, and inevitably because of how popular Dollar General stores are and the amount of traffic they generate. That's a natural part of that discussion too. So either one of you, feel free to speak to when and where we determine whether or not a turn lane is needed and is appropriate.
Well, just a little bit of background on this road. Of course, it is identified on our major thoroughfare plan as being improved to a 3-lane cross-section or 2-lane with shoulders, which is basically the same thing. We actually purchased some traffic counters and had them out there over the last week or so. I'm going to turn this part of the conversation over to Mr. Corbett because he's got some reports from our our other engineer on staff regarding this, and he might be able to address the technical part of this a little better than I can.
What we were trying to do is, as you mentioned in several discussions on these turn lanes, so we were able to purchase counters ourselves. We put them out there with the idea of comparing them with the TDOT roadway guidelines, which you don't have a copy of it. We just put it together, staff, and this came out of the TDOT road manual. And our indications currently out there, now the way these things are set, there's a lane 1 and lane 2. Lane 1 would be coming off of the interstate, going toward the subdivision there, or going to, and then lane 2 is coming from the other direction. Where the left turn lane would be needed is if you're coming off the interstate going to turn into the store itself. And the peak number we got during that time was 149 cars in a 15-minute period. That's basically at 5 to 6:30 in the afternoon. It's when rush, people coming home from work and they're going in there. And then you put that in. There's a formula that TDOT gives you. You go into this chart, and there's a percentage, 30% of the, figure 30% of the cars would turn into the Dollar General to pick up milk or bread or whatever. You go in there, and on these different axes, and you have the advancing volume plus the opposing volume. In other words, this volume down here is coming off the interstate. This is the volume coming toward you. And then the dark area is the area that TDOT says you definitely don't need a turn lane. And then there's some other areas in here that have to do with other criteria. Well, our particular study out there puts us approximately in this area right here for this particular store, and that's based on the week that we ran the data. So what we're going to try to do, the purpose of this, try to do as we get these projects in the future, is try to go ahead and put these out there in time for us. We can give you a report when you ask these types of questions. We can, but again, this can change based if you got a hill there, if you got a curve, based on a lot of things. But that road is pretty flat. It is narrow, but by giving us the right of way, and eventually, if we widen the road, of course, there'd be less need for the turn lane. But this is dealing with what we have out there currently.
So, Bill, would you say the dark gray area says they do or do not?
Do not. If if you go in with your numbers and it comes out in this dark area, that's how if you go to them and they do a study and it comes out and they'll come back to you and say you don't need a turn lane at that point. They're basically, what they're trying to do is they try to boil everything down to a number, and it takes some of the guesswork out of what you're doing.
So this is going to do not.
This is we do not need, based on our current data.
One thing I think was mentioned was, on Capitol Way right there, we just approved a truck stop. So, the city's coming in and putting a turn lane in right there. I think they, on the right hand, turn it into Capitol Way.
Yeah, when we approved our site plan for that, we required additional right-of-way in there for a turn lane, which was in conjunction with the city approving the sewer going in there. That was it was a kind of a joint thing.
So these calculations, we can only go off of what's already there at application instead of what's already approved and future, projected.
Exactly.
So I don't know if that's good planning or not.
He's also in the worst case scenario. They do their traffic count at rush hour on weekdays, right?
That's correct. We picked out the highest number, tried to get the peak that we could expect in the morning and in the afternoon. It was higher in the afternoon than it was in the morning, and we anticipate that because most people go to work at the same time, but they don't necessarily come home at the same time because shift work, maybe they stop or whatever.
Well, I'm just thinking with something that's already approved and is coming, like the truck stop, what does it do to the numbers? If you compare that with, I don't know if it'd be compared with the one right across the street or the one on the other side of the interstate, with those numbers coming in, so you're going to double one or the other, whichever one of the size requirement.
Again, remember, the turn lane for the truck stop is to the right of what's there. So the numbers we have are the lanes that, other words, if you come off interstate to go into that truck stop, you should stay in the additional lane we provided versus coming over to the middle lane, which is where you would actually go down past that and put that turn lane in that middle part down, where you'd have to widen the road a little bit.
Okay, that's.
I'm glad to hear this study because we need to be right on this for sure, because I live in the Rockville area where there is one out there. And on that one right there, I personally see out there where the turn lane was not put in, and there are problems out there at different times. I know that speed of out there should be 50 miles per hour, which it is, which most people don't do as they go out there. And I've seen many opportunities of people avoiding accidents and things of that type. But if you're doing this study here and you have to deal with what you have to deal with and the time there, I'm glad those studies are being done.
Yeah, a little history on that, and I realized we didn't have the study, but that's a state road, and so they asked the developer to put in a turn lane. He then went to the state to say, we don't want you to put the turn in right now because we're going to widen the road. And what they did is they put a bond up for the work to do the turn lane, and so that's the reason the turn lane's not there. You being the planning commission, said we need these turn lanes, but you need to go get state permission because it's their road, and they said not at this time.
Pettis, to your point, we've got one on Lascassas Highway, and there was a turn lane put in there, and they were approved within the same time, reasonable time frame, and it's worked out well, I think.
Okay, any other questions, comments? Thank you, Mr. Turner.
Thank you.
Anyone else wish to speak for or against? Anyone else wish to speak for or against? Close the public hearing.
Doug, what is that gravel driveway that runs between those properties? What is that for, and where does it go?
It goes just further in the back, and
I believe there's a residential house there. I don't know if it's used.
Any more questions? A motion?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Motion to approve. Do I have a second? Have a second? All in favor of the motion say aye. All opposed no. Motion carries. Okay, rezoning conditional use permit, location Coleman Road.
Okay.
Auntie Turner.
Our next application is located on Coleman Road. The property is currently R15 with a proposed zoning to services for the use of a general store. The applicant is proposing to subdivide a 2.65 acre lot from 2 existing tracts. The concept plan, which you'll find in front of you, shows a 9,360 square foot Dollar General store with 41 parking spaces. The store will front on John Bragg Highway, however the access will be on Coleman Road. The property does currently contain 2 single-family houses. Those will remain and be subdivided off if this is approved. All the surrounding property is zoned R15. The properties to the east and the west do have conditional use permits for retail and wholesale nurseries. The John Bragg Highway is designated as a Tennessee Scenic Highway by the state legislature. This application would not violate any of the restrictions placed on scenic highways. We have received several phone calls about this application. One was in opposition. Most were just curious about the application. However, they did voice some concerns about the drainage on the site and the traffic in the area. So once again, I'll just show you the area. And I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, questions? Well,
Look. How far past Rutherford and Mercury is this?
It's a couple, looks like a couple miles. I don't know the exact distance, but it's not just right there, about 3 miles, The applicant's indicating about 3 miles.
Okay.
Will.
I was looking at the site plan here, and it shows the ingress and egress up on an end up close to John Bragg, just right past that TVA right-of-way. And I'm wondering how much stacking room there is. I don't know how much stacking there would be. If we're turning off John Bragg, turning in. Looks to me like it'd be a little better if it was a little farther down the site. I mean, is there some reason why it's that close to? And I don't know how much stacking it would actually be, but if people trying to turn in, they could back up. Looks like it's about 200 feet to me here.
Roughly, I would estimate. That was actually, when I looked at it, that was something I was concerned with myself. I mean, the applicant may want to address that as to why it was right there, maybe not moving it a little further up Coleman Road, possibly. I don't really see why that would be a big issue, but they may have some reason why it was right there that they could let us know. So.
Okay, other questions? Rhonda?
What is the property that's the sort of vacant box that sits inside this?
That's part of the proposal is to cut off a portion of that property. There are currently 2 parcels, and as I said, there actually are 2 houses as well. However, the hatch mark is denoting a conditional use permit that was approved by the Board of Zoning Appeals for 2 houses on 1 property. So I'm not exactly sure why they have the smaller lot subdivided off when they actually have permission to have 2 houses on 1 lot. But both acreage would come for both of those parcels.
Okay, any other questions? We'll open it up to public hearing. Would anyone wish to speak for that, Mr. Turner?
Associates Realty in Nashville. Again, the same freestanding Dollar General store. I'd like to address real quick the trips generated by this use. The Dollar General internal studies show roughly at this type of location, this store will generate about 250 to 300 cars or trips per day. That's a 12-hour. It's a 14-hour. They open at 8. I believe now they're closing stores at 10. So it's roughly 20 to 25 cars per hour. Given that amount of activity, we felt that the large right-of-way, we felt the entrance was far enough from the highway that it wouldn't pose a stacking problem. If this was a higher generating traffic establishment, then it might be an issue. But at those numbers, we don't feel it'll be a problem. Happy to answer any other questions you might have.
Any other questions?
I have a question. Is there a downside for you to just sliding the entrance down further? I mean, based on this design, it looks like it just runs parallel with your road frontage. So is there a downside to you to sliding it down?
Sorry. The way our trucks come in, they'll pull in front of the store and then back to the loading area. If we move the entrance down, that would affect their turning circulation there. This is just a standard type layout. We could possibly shift it just a little bit further down Coleman Road. But it is from the property line to the edge of the existing highway pavement, that's probably 75, 80 feet. And then from the property line back to maybe more than that, back to the entrance, you've got another 70 feet or so, maybe 90 feet. So it's a pretty good distance.
What does that relate to in number of cars?
A typical parking spot is normally anywhere about 19 feet long, generally. Is what your 9 by 19
cars.
is a parking spot.
Yes,
So,
roughly
I mean,
10 cars.
say 20 feet, you know, just for rounding purposes, you know.
So a few feet shift, it'd have to be at least 10 feet to put one more car in that stack, wouldn't it? And then say get you too far back toward the, coming in, really, your entrance would be to the side or the rear of the store that way.
Yeah, it would be getting close to coming in on the side of the store to pick up one extra car.
Okay, Will?
Well, I'm very familiar with the one at Walter Hill, and the trucks do back down the side, and there's a truck there a lot of the time, unloading material, and if that entrance moved back, it would conflict with that truck. And whereas I was thinking a few minutes ago it'd be good to have that drive moved down, now I see where that truck can back down there now, and he's blocking a few parking spots. He's not blocking the flow of traffic at all. If we move that entrance down, that truck's blocking the flow of traffic, and that makes it worse than it probably is here. So the more I think about it, I actually like the way it's drawn.
And something that I think, you know, after hearing the discussion too, I think this site benefits from is the fact that you got John Bragg Highway on one side, but on the north side you've got Old Woodbury Pike, which essentially parallel each other. So if for some reason there's too many cars in one direction going down to John Bragg, someone could just turn back up, go back up the other way off of Old Woodbury Pike, and probably still pretty much get to where they're trying to go. So.
Okay, any other questions? Yes, Renee?
Doug, what's the plan for that area out there?
As far as, you mean general, like land use or transportation?
Sure. Land use. Is there an approach to what's going out there?
Well, the only approach really at this point is what is proposed under the comprehensive plan. Now, of course, you know, not using this as this hasn't been officially approved yet, but this area falls within the. It may actually fall within the. I don't know if it's going to go that far over. Let's see. It'll be right outside of the node for the Joe B. Jackson and John Bragg Highway area. Now, it'll probably be within, say, about a mile or so, and this does show kind of like a mile and a half buffer, a 1 mile buffer around there, which would anticipate these kind of uses in a more suburban, rural type setting. It looks like mostly rural. No, I'm sorry. This would be more of a suburban type setting. Something that the plan does recommend is us looking at some of the sub areas in more detail. Like we have the Christiana Buchanan land use study, doesn't really encompass this area. We also have like the North Area study, which again does not encompass this, but maybe looking at this area or just some of the other sub areas in the county in a little more detail. This doesn't get as specific as recommending land uses, as most comprehensive plans don't. But this does appear to be close to that development node where Joe B. Jackson will eventually intersect with John Bragg Highway. Not just right there, but probably within a mile or so of that, which is in that buffer area.
And my disclaimer is that the church that I pastor is out that way, so okay. That's just a disclaimer.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, thanks, sir. Does anyone else wish to speak for or against?
I'm Edmund Luther. I live 444 Coleman Road.
Can you talk into the mic?
I did not get any information on this zoning. The main problem I have with this store coming up on Coleman Road is a short road. You got John Bragg, it's an interstate. You got Old Woodbury Highway, it's 55 miles an hour. And you've got Craner Road. There's a bridge. These photos right here, pictures were taken on the 30th, and this area floods. I'm just against it altogether. Speed, traffic. Trying to find a good one here. That's the field anyway. Beside this store, there's a creek. It's a dry creek. In my property, the rain flows down the road toward that creek. That's that same creek right up the road. This is John Bray with backs up to it.
Sir, are these pictures something we can keep, because we'll need to keep them for the record? Is that going to be a problem? We can keep these photos that you're passing out?
That'd be fine.
Thank you.
Can we see your property on this map behind you?
Pardon?
Can we see your property on this map behind you?
The two John Braggs going south.
Okay.
200 feet. On the first house on the right, 444. Then you come to Weeks and Coleman Road and Weeks split at the stop sign. I'm afraid that if they put the store here, it's going to flood it out. He may build it up. Now, where is this water going to go? Downstream.
Okay. Anybody, does anyone have any questions? Thank you, sir. Anyone else wish to speak? Yes, sir.
Jerry Robinson, I'm the owner of the property out there, and I'm the guy you need to talk to if you need to know something about it. I was born and raised on it. House was built in 1943. I lived there all my life except what time I put in the Service, United States Navy and Eastern Airlines. What he's referring to is the creek was once the old road. They traveled it, and there was water come down there on high rain. 43 years that house has been standing and never flooded. Now, the last couple of 3 years, I talked to Brother Corbett out here, get a little explanation on flood insurance. And I actually kind of talked around there, and it seems like that they think that there's great probability in the next 100 years that 7 inches of rain will fall in 1 hour. So that qualifies you if you got a building or my house is in there, I'm going to pay flood insurance on it. It hadn't flooded yet. There's been high water down there. When I left, they renamed that. My dad gave him permission, first of all, to put that, get it out of that old road, creek bed, whatever you want to call it. Somebody named it Dry Creek when I was left. And they built a road up on us. And when it waters, water comes down through there. But with new equipment out here at the county, Brother Jernigan has kept that trimmed out. It flows through quite well. It does get up there to that road level, but not what I call a flood. There's some high water, there's floods, and there's some streams. But I've done found out if you live close to water, brother, and you got some finance to be done, it's going to fall under flood insurance. I graduated up there at Kittrell. I left here a short period of time from the Navy, and like I say, I lived in Georgia in 22 years. That once was a 31-acre tract. Bragg Highway split the thing up, and there's new ownership on the other side. Now, you talk the distance from the old highway, Woodbury Road, to Bragg is probably about 300 feet. About the same distance that my deputy friend back there lives, down Weeks Road, or Coleman Road. Coleman goes out, Weeks splits. There is a double-wide trailer there. I have my son put there about 5 years ago. Looks like I'm going to acquire that. It needed a little piece of property about almost an acre out for him to get financing for that. That's a double wide. He is since divorced, little grandkid and child, and her husband's there now. The red building you saw was a barn. It's been there for ever and a day. My uncle built that in about 46, 48. The traffic, like I say, you can Bragg Highway. Brother Ed there and I have called each other on phones. We've suspicioned several things going on up there. He's run a few of them, and I've run a few. But I don't think you're going to stop that, store or no store. There's turn lanes if you're coming out of Murfreesboro from the intersection up here at Walmart, the new Walmart in Rutherford, 4 miles. If you're going east, there's a turn lane there already into Coleman Road, going toward the old highway. Coming back east, there's not a turn lane going into that property, but there's a turn lane on the south side where you go down Coleman Road there toward his property. 2-lane, like I say, in between the two. The old highway's a 2-lane, and to say they don't speed out there is another story. But y'all seen the type of stores these people build. I think that y'all can work out the turning lanes and the road situations, but I'd rather have a store like that than try to put up a bar or something like that. Now, there's a church west of that on the south side. There's another church east of it on the south side. It's flat. There's no hills for probably going east at least 1.5 miles, 2 miles up there. And up coming back toward Murfreesboro, there's a slight rise, and it's 1/2 mile or more to that. So you've got a good view is what I'm saying, what's ahead of you. Now, to say there won't be wrecks, I would never tell you that. But I don't think it'd have anything to do with as far as egress or entrance or exit in that property. Like I say, it's got an intersection always there, and you can sit there and comfortably get in and out of it. I don't know if it won't do like it did up on 64 up there with that blinking light, you know. I don't know whether that goes in the picture or not, but it's very, you can see everything coming down through that way. The only thing I can see would be a problem right there, traffic-wise. I don't really see anything, but again, it depends on who's driving the vehicles. And was the entrance going to be off Coleman Road? Was that what you decided it was going to do?
Yes.
Okay. Then you've got, from where you're talking about, brother, down there, that's at least 100 foot or more down toward my home to turn in. You can make a turn lane there. It encompasses that barn and all there. That barn is about 40 foot parallel with the old highway, or the Coleman Road area there. And then you got another 40 to 60 up to where the Bragg is. So you've got over 100 foot to make an entrance in there on. It is 2-lane. That part is that Coleman Road. There's ability on both of them as far as the 4-lane and it both are. I don't see any problem with that. But that's just a little history on it.
Okay, does anyone have any questions, Mr. Robinson? No questions?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Does anyone else wish to speak for or against? Anyone else wish to speak for or against? Okay, we'll close the public hearing. Will? Got a question here.
I was going to ask Mr. Steele, I see in the audience, and I see his name on this plat. He can come talk to us a little bit how they're going to handle the water there, if that's appropriate.
We'll get you a minute, Steve.
While he's coming up, if you don't mind, Dale, I mean, were you good with the drainage on this? I mean, have y'all looked at it? What do you think?
Well, right now, remember, we're just going for the zoning. This is not the site plan review, so we haven't looked in detail at the drainage or where the roads are, you know, where it's located, that kind of stuff.
And we will make sure if this is approved, whenever the site plan comes up, no more water is put on neighboring properties than is there now.
Right.
I don't know if it's appropriate to put you on the spot this time, but come on up, would at least ask if you've looked at elevations. Looks to us like a couple of laymen here, the water's coming back to the pipe on the road and going across under John Bragg. Do you see being a problem handling the water without putting additional water on this neighbor down the pipe?
Right. Mr. Chairman, members of the Planning Commission, my name is Steve Steele. I'm with Huddleston Steel Engineering, as Mr. Jordan mentioned. This property is in the 100-year flood zone as identified on the FEMA maps. That's the, you might say, the bad news. The good news is it's in a studied area where they provide elevations that tell us what elevation that 100-year flood would get to. And we've actually gone ahead and shot elevations on this site because even though we're not at the site plan review process yet, we didn't want to present something we didn't think would work. This particular site will need about 2 feet of fill to get it at the 100-year flood elevation. The county requirement is that the floor of the building be a foot above that. So what I anticipate we'll come back to you with on a site plan, we'll be adding about 2 feet of fill where the building and the parking is, and then the building slab and the stone and all that goes under it will bring us up the other foot. Now you're correct, this property drains toward Coleman Road. Once it crosses under the culverts on Coleman Road, it actually heads to the north, which is away from John Bragg Highway. The drainage is generally heading northward or up, as shown on the property above us. The flood map shows that the culvert under John Bragg carries the 1% or the 100-year flood. So once it passes through there and it's across the road, across Coleman Road from this site, it should progress on its way. We won't do anything to impede that. And in fact, we will also do stormwater detention on our site to make sure we don't add to that. But we'll address all that when we come back with the site plan.
The reason I ask, I mean, is there adequate area here to retain the water?
Yes, there is.
Okay.
We can do that.
Okay. Thanks, Steve.
Thank you.
All right, have a motion to approve it. Do I have a second? Second. All in favor of the motion say aye. All opposed, no. Motion carries. Okay, comprehensive plan, that's scratched. Okay. Doug, we'll need to decide on a date for when we're going.
Yeah, if we could, before, I mean, if we don't get a date hammered out right now, that's fine. I mean, I just don't want it to be hanging out there. I'd like to try to get something set in stone as quick as we can. One of the constraints that we're up against as far as setting the meeting date, you know, we thought about having this at the January night meeting. Unfortunately, we need to, state law requires us to have a public hearing, and we have to have notification of that public hearing 30 days in advance of the public hearing for the comprehensive plan before the Planning Commission. So even if I were to run it tomorrow, which obviously I can't, but we'd already be within that 30-day window. One thought that we did have was possibly making our daytime meeting in January a nighttime meeting, make it a 6 p.m. as opposed to a 9 a.m. meeting. The only conflict I really see at this point is Public Safety Committee meets in 2:05 at that time. We could talk to the cable folks about either having it in here or maybe being back in the mezzanine, because really all that would be, there would be no other zonings applications like there was tonight. This would be simply looking at site plans and plats if there were any waivers, things like that, and then the comprehensive plan. So that's an option. And as I recall, none of the committee members on public safety are on the Planning Commission. Gary Farley was the only one at the time, but of course he's no longer on the Planning Commission, so that shouldn't affect anybody else. So that's an option. I know that's not normally what we do on that meeting. Usually it's a 9 a.m. meeting, but we could advertise that date to be at 6 p.m. if that'd be something that you'd be interested in doing. Another option might be to just schedule another meeting just entirely for that, just a comprehensive plan. Just have a special meeting set aside one night, and just have that as the only agenda item. That's another option. So those are. I'll just throw those out there for discussion.
What's the date on that?
I believe that's
24?
correct, yes.
24? Does anybody have a problem with the 24th for a night meeting instead of having a 9 o'clock in the morning meeting? Does anybody would rather wait till get home, check calendars or whatever? Or?
Yeah, and that's fine. I mean, as of right now, today's the 13th, we'd be able to get advertisement into the Murfreesboro Post by the end of, this next coming Sunday, which would be the 19th, I believe. Yeah, that would give us the 30 days and then a few extra. So that would meet the state law requirement.
No day meeting this month.
That is correct. Yes, I was going to make that announcement as well. That we are, as you recall, about I think back in October, we discussed the fact that the second meeting of this month would fall that Monday right after Christmas, and it's consistent with what we did last year. We decided not to have that meeting this month. So, and actually, if you recall, we actually decided that all future occurrences of that meeting won't happen either, so we'll just not even have that on the calendar when we put our new calendar, which actually we already have. We've already taken that date out for next year, that fourth meeting. We'll just have the one meeting in December like we are tonight, and like we did last year.
Did that night meeting, didn't bother you?
The 24th.
Okay, if that's okay with everybody, I'll check. The only one I'm aware of is the Public Safety Committee. I'm sorry? Yes, on the 24th. But I'll double check that, and I'll also get with our cable folks to find out if they have a preference. I just don't want there to be a conflict with us meeting in here and then the committee meeting in that room. If they'd rather, we can meet over in the mezzanine. But I'll work that out with them, and I'll let you all know how that goes.
Okay. Any other questions? Have a motion?
I'm sorry. No, we'll still be having our regular January night meeting for our zones.
Our first one.
Our first one. We'll still be having that. I'm sorry?
It'll still be a night meeting.
Yes, that'll be, that meeting's staying the same time, 6 o'clock here in this room.
And everybody certainly needs an email on this change on the 24th so we don't show up.
Yeah, and we'll send out a reminder to everybody to make sure that you're all aware that, we are going to make that a night meeting.
Okay. Any other questions?
They'll both be at 6, correct. Now
10 and 24?
Yeah, I believe that's correct. We did, okay. Just forgot what I was going to say. Never mind. It just flew away. It's gone. Yeah.
Okay. Anybody else have anything? Motion?
I'm sorry. Before, I just want to remind everybody about the training. I think I've pretty much spoken to everybody here with this coming Friday. Again, it's oriented to new Planning Commission or Board of Commissioner BZA members. However, it'll be a good overview for everybody if you're able to attend. I think the only person I hadn't heard from, Mr. Windrow, I don't think I'd heard from you. I'll get with you after the meeting to confirm that. It'll be at CUD's building. We'll start at 10 o'clock. CUD has allowed us the use of their room, and actually, Mr. McElroy came up to me a couple of meetings ago and said, hey, why don't we try this jointly, because they were trying to have something as well. They've agreed to provide lunch, which we very much appreciate. So just want to state my appreciation to Mr. McElroy and his staff as well.
I was just going to say, if there was, I don't know if it'd be appropriate or not, but anybody in the audience that came for the comprehensive plan, that let you know if they had any questions or concerns, so we could definitely note those since they've been here and spent the night with us to be here to maybe speak on it or something, to get with you on anything. I think you said that earlier, but definitely we want to try to work that out, and we'll be back in January then to
leave everybody out there
for our public hearing then on that.
Absolutely, that'd be great.
Motion to adjourn, Ron and Steve Saxon. All in favor of that motion, say aye.